else still, if you have anything you want to just say or release, do so at this time. You can. Um, you have permission to at this time. If not, then I'm gonna move forward right into the Bible study portion. But as always, I welcome you guys to Koinonia Shalom Midweek Bible Study. I love you guys. You guys are amazing. Um, and I'm just happy that you all are here. Once again, this is going to be great. Um, I just really love y'all for real, and I love the Lord, of course. But if no one has anything to release or no one has anything that they desire to say, we gonna get this ball rolling. Let's get this ball rolling. Um, last week, thank you, Lord. Oh, let me hit this button too. Give me 1 second, guys. Last week we went over we did like a brief introduction to. I'm not gonna say a brief introduction because that's not what it was. It was more than that. We went into Abram. It was the call of Abram. We went into the call of Abram. Him being called from amongst his family and him being called to a land of promise that God said he was going to show him. We went into Genesis chapter 12 and went over Abram's name, how it meant exalted father. Um, we went over some other things about what it
See
meant
that?
to be kindred,
See that HI is
um,
equivalent to
and what it meant to be kindred and family and different things of that nature. We went over what the understanding of a house is, because Abram left the house of his father. He left the protection and the leading of his father to go on a journey with Abba. Um, we went over those things. We went into the understanding of land and how um it's about territory and it's about boundaries and how the word eretz speaks more than just you know the earth, but it speaks to a country, a territory, a district, a region, and how there is a region that was allotted to Abraham and his descendants. There is a territory, a district, that is allotted to Abram and his descendants. And we talked about how that territory had been being occupied by someone who was not supposed to be there. We talked about that. We talked about the understanding of the word goy, and things of that nature. All of that we dealt with last week. This week, if I was to title this week's message, this week's teaching is titled Abram and Lot, because we're getting into um because we understand who Abram was growing up. We went over to that, went to certain writings concerning that. And it's amazing because the more that I began to look into some of the studies and writings of some of the rabbis from earlier centuries, 16th and before, um, a lot of them had insight into Abram's childhood that a lot of us today just either we don't possess or we just ignore. Um, and especially dealing with, I believe it was Rabbi Eliezer. Um, I remember I made the statement that I believe that he read the book of Yasha. I truly do, because the more I've read his writing concerning Abraham, the more it matches up with what I've read in the book of Yasha. And it's astounding to me because we shun away a lot of stuff. Um, but it seems this is where they're getting their understanding from regarding his upbringing and who he was and his challenges with Nimrod and things of that nature. But now we are here. Abram is a man, right? Abram has his own family. He still have not yet had his child yet, but he has a wife. He has a nephew who has adopted, you can say. He has those who follow him. Um, he has those who are loyal to him. He has people who he is responsible for. He has become a father figure to many because they follow him. And not only that, Abram was sent. He was sent. He was called out of one place and sent into another. He was called out from the land of the Chaldees. He was called out of the land of Ur, where his father was residing, and called to the land of promise. He, right here, we can see that he was sent in chapter 12. He was sent to that land. God sent him there. And this would, by definition and by default, make him an apostle because he was sent and God gave him a vision. God gave him a word. God gave him a promise. And he was sent to take that land. So as we get into chapter 13, we're going to see the challenges, and we've already started seeing the challenges of being sent. Because remember, in chapter 12, when Abram was sent, he went into Canaan, but in his time in Canaan, of course, there was people there that he was peaceful with, but there was a famine that struck the land. That famine forced him to go to Egypt, and he faced challenges in Egypt, but the challenges that he faced in Egypt caused him to accrue wealth. And now he has left Egypt, and now we get into the part where he's going back to Canaan, and now we're about to see the dynamic between him and Lot. So let's get into this. I'm gonna read it. We're in chapter 13 of Genesis. It's Genesis 13. Genesis chapter 13 has about 18 verses. So I'm gonna read it real quickly, and then we're gonna get into it. It says, I'm reading from the ESV version. It says, so Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot went with him into the Negeb, or into the south. Now Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. And he journeyed on from the Negeb as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place where he had made an altar at first. And there Abram called upon the name of the Lord. And Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, so that the land could not support both of them dwelling together. Excuse me, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. At that time, the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the land. Then Abram said to Lot, let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we are kinsmen. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will take the right. Or if you go take the right hand, then I will take the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered, everywhere like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, and the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. Thus they separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities of the valley, and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. And the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land that you see, I will give to you and to your offspring forever. And I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring also can be counted. Arise, walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give it to you. So Abram moved his tent and came and settled by the oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron. And there he built an altar to the Lord. There he built an altar to the Lord. Now, let's get into this. When we first began, it says, so Abram went up from Egypt. Now, we know when he left Egypt, he left with cattle, silver, gold. He left with wealth. He left with more men servants and maid servants, and not only he, but also Lot. And we remember how the story went. Pharaoh thought that Abram was Sarai's brother. So because he wanted to make good with Sarai, he continuously blessed Abram, and he also blessed Lot. The reason why Lot is not mentioned as being blessed is because Lot is not relevant. He's not in the peripheral of the like it's not dealing with the peripherals. Lot is on the side. Abraham is the relevance. Abram is the relevance. So this is why it doesn't mention Lot. But we know Lot gained wealth there because when Lot left the first place after his father died that they were in, Lot didn't have nothing. Not like that. Not to be comparable to cause strife between Abram's men and his. Lot didn't have possessions like that because had he did this, it would have been an issue, right? So Lot accrued much of his wealth in Egypt. So that means that Pharaoh was blessing both Abram and he was being a blessing to Lot. But Abram of more degree, of course, because of we know that after he found out that Sarai was Abram's wife, he blessed him even more. The scripture it says, so Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had. And remember, when he left Egypt, Pharaoh also gave them Hagar. From when we was reading, he gave them Hagar. Hagar being Pharaoh's daughter from a concubine. And it says, and Lot, and they went into the Negeb, or into the south. Now Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. Now I want to deal with this, how the Bible calls Abram very rich. Abram is described as very rich, which means heavy. The word for rich here is the Hebrew word kabad or kabed. It means it comes from if you want to look it up, it's H3515. H3515. It means heavy, great, massive, abundant, numerous, heavy, dull, hard, difficult, burdensome. It could mean very oppressive. It can also mean numerous and rich, right? It comes from kabad. So kabed comes from kabad, which can mean, if you break down the letters and things of that nature in the Hebrew, it can mean heavy, it can represent the liver, and it also means honor. Someone or something that is heavy in weight, wealth, abundance, importance, or respect. This person is considered kabad. This is also the word understood as glory. Because the weight of the presence. So like, let's say if a person comes before a king, the weight of his presence, or not even of his presence, the reverence that you have towards him causes you to bow. The importance and the respect that you have for him causes you to bow. His presence, him just being in the room, he's a regular person, but the knowledge that you have of him causes you to honor him. Now, a person like Abba has a presence. Abba has a tangible presence. Yes, there's aspects about him that we understand and we know and we worship him, we glorify him, and because of the importance and the great respect that we have. But there is a There is a realm and a dimension in Abba that when you get to in prayer, you start to feel the weight of his glory. It goes past honor. It goes past uh, 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 um, respect. It goes past importance. It's when you start to feel his presence and it's heavy. Okay. And many, so I'm sure some of you can attest to that. In those days, wealth was tangible. Okay. It was livestock. It says that he had livestock, silver, gold. We also know that he had employees, basically, handmaids, maidservants. The more wealthy an individual, the heavier his load. This is why the word for rich at this time, the word for wealth, is the same word that means heavy. Because in Hebrew culture, um, their words, the words that they used to describe any and everything was based upon the five senses. Okay. And so if I see a person to be wealthy, if I believe a person to be rich, there's so many aspects that go into them being wealthy, and it's more than just monetary, but it's about the load that they carry. Remember, one of the words that I said, kabod, means also meant burdensome. It's the burden that they bear. Okay. In those days, wealth was tangible. The more wealthy an individual was, the heavier his load. The journeys Abram and his followers took would have lasted longer than others. He had cattle, women, men, and servants, and among those, silver and gold in surplus. Abram was a man of abundance. He was a man of importance. He was a man of respect. He was a heavy man. He was a man of, he had different things on his, he had responsibilities. He was a man of burdens. People's lives were in his hand. And yet in all this, he found time to worship. He was able to lead, and he was able, this is how magnificent of a person he was. On occasions, Abram would have to stop because of how abundant his camp was. Because when you look at what it's telling us, it says, so Abram went up from Egypt. Now, Egypt and Israel are miles apart, miles apart. He and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him into the south. It says, now Abram was very rich in livestock and silver and gold. It says, and he journeyed on from the Negeb, from the south, as far as to Bethel. So he had stations to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place where he had made an altar at first. So he had so much when he left Egypt that he had to stop at certain points. Because you have to imagine a surplus of people, basically like a caravan, with cattle, with men and women, children, and then you also have different types of carriages or camels that's carrying the resources, the precious stones, the silver, the gold, the linens, the different things. Abram would have had all of this, and it would have made his journeys longer. Why? Because you have to stop, because people need to rest. You have to stop at different places because people need to, the animals need to rest and be rejuvenated and things of that nature. And you're carrying the burden, and that burden is basically the inheritance for your children. It is everything that you own. But in his stopping, Abram would come upon places that he would, such as Bethel, where he would build altars. In his resting, he would worship. And sometimes we skip over stuff like this because where it says and Lot who went with him, Abram also had flocks and things of that nature. Where it says that Abram went to Bethel, where it says that this is the place where he built the altar, it's reminding us that he went back to that place because he first built that altar, I believe, I want to say in chapter 12. He built that altar and he ended up going back to it. It's a place of worship. It's a place where he go to sacrifice. It's a place that he will go to call on the name of the Lord. He went back to that place before he was to get to the land of promise. And the fact that he had to keep stopping from Egypt, going down south into Bethel, going down more south into the Negev, shows that, of course, this man was he had a lot of people with him. He had a lot of things with him. And the reason why I keep belaboring this point is because I want you guys to have the understanding that this was him and Lot together at the time. Now, Abram had a lot, but the stuff that he had at the time, Lot is under him still. Okay? Lot is still under him. And verses 5-6 says this, and Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, so that the land could not support both of them dwelling together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. So it says that Lot had flocks, herds, and tents. So that means that Lot had cattle, he had the small animals, and he had people. Because if you have tents, that means you have people. It doesn't really say that he had silver and gold. It says that Abram had the silver and gold, but Lot had the flocks, he had the herds, he had the tents, so that the land could not support both of them dwelling together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. Okay, y'all hear that? So Lot was also prosperous due to the sagacity of Abram. Remember, we talked about this last week, how Abram was a sagacious person, very wise, keen, perceptive, having abundance in the same things Abram did, but of lesser quantity and honor. The man with the plan and wherewithal to get the ball rolling was Abram. God, working in his favor, increased everything he possessed 100-fold. And at the time, Lot was under that. The thing about Abram's sagacity, and I'm gonna go, and I want to go over, I want to deal with what sagacity is again. Sagacity finds out. One of the sentences that I found when looking up the definition of sagacity is this: sagacity finds out the intermediate ideas to discover what connection there is in each link of the chain. It sees how things work. It sees how things are run. That's sagacity. And then what it does is it when a person is sagacious, they see how it will work in their favor. It goes back to wisdom, right? The definition, I want to go through this. I want to talk about this. The definition from the etymological dictionary of sagacity is the state or character of being keenly perceptive, acuteness of mental discernment. In the 1500s, from French sagacite, it means keenness of perception, quality of being acute, from sagax, of quick perception, acute, related to sagas, prophetic. So to be sagacious is not only to be keen, it's not only to be, it doesn't just straight up, it doesn't just mean wisdom. You could be wise and not prophetic. You could be wise because of experience. Okay? Abram had a keen sense of perception because what he possessed is discernment. And he possessed this discernment because of his access and understanding to the Spirit of God. Him being able to talk with the Lord, him being able to hear the voice of the Lord speak to him, gave him understanding and a prophetic wherewithal when it came to what was going to take place. So when I say that Abram was sagacious, he was discerning, he was prophetic, and due to him being prophetic, he moved in wisdom based upon what he knew was gonna. So imagine a person already being intelligent, already being wise, because they're up there. They're up there in age where wisdom is starting to kick in. All of the life's experiences are starting to kick in. But on top of being wise, on top of being intelligent and knowledgeable and educated, now you add being prophetic, because being prophetic is just not the element of foretelling or forthtelling. That's not all. But being prophetic also deals with seeing things as they are and seeing God's hand in it. It's more than just seeing foretelling and forthtelling, but it's being inspired by the Lord at a given moment to see and do what he needs you to do. Because listen, when you understand a prophet is a person that is inspired, whether it's through vision or through word. So Abram and his going in Egypt was inspired. Him being inspired to move a certain way in Egypt brought them wealth. Him being inspired, right, to leave from his father's tutelage, you get what I'm saying, made him his own man. And now we get him being inspired, exiting out and going and stopping in different places and worshiping and things of that nature. This is Abram. Abram is a sagacious person. He is prophetic. He's not just some old man that has gained wisdom. You got to understand, he was able to talk to the Lord. He was able to be inspired by the Lord. And this is what makes him prophetic. He was a great leader. Okay? Lot is not described as prophetic or sagacious or having wisdom. Lot was able to benefit from the discernment of his uncle/father figure, which is Abram, due to what? Proximity. Proximity. Lot only got what he received because of proximity. Had Abram never taken Lot in, Lot wouldn't have become the man that he was as far as for that moment of wealth. Because it was a moment. Trust and believe. It was a moment. And due to that proximity with such a sagacious, discerning man, father figure, someone who he could have really learned from, and who he did to some certain aspects, because we will later see with his dealings in Sodom and Gomorrah that he has truly learned some things from Abram. We will see that, Abram did rub off him in some ways, but not in all. Okay? But Lot became the man that he was. He was able to build and gain wealth because of Abram's sagacity, because of his wisdom, because of his understanding of the world around him, because he had a direct line to Abba. What Abram heard Abba say to him in his spirit was manifested in the flesh. I said this in prayer earlier about our provision being accessed first in the spirit, and then it's made manifest in the flesh. As we grab hold of the vision, as we grab hold of the word of the Lord that he has spoken into our hearts and into our spirit, we grab hold to it. He starts giving us the ideas and the answers and the things that we need, to manifest it into the realm that we're in. But this was a benefit of being in Abram's proximity. So under Abram's proximity, we know there was protection. We know there was wisdom. We know there was the gift to be able to discern. We know, be able to see things according to how they truly are. So that way, Abram wasn't a fool. He's not going to put you into something that will cause your demise. There was safety being under Abram, right? But the verses goes on in verses 7 and 8. This is what it says. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. At that time, the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the land. Then Abram said to Lot, let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we are kinsmen. Abram is seeking peace. He's seeking peace. But let's deal with something. Here, according to how it is written, there is evidence that there was an escalation of contention between Abram's herdsmen and Lot's. Why? Because it says that there was strife. But that escalated. See, when you're reading in English, you won't catch it. Because in the English, it'll say, and there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock at that time. That's what it says. It says there was strife. But let's look at the Hebrew. Let's look at the Hebrew. The Hebrew, the first word for strife that we see is in verse 7. And it says, and there was strife. The second word that we see for strife is in verse 8. And it says, let there be no strife between you and me. Right here is where I see the escalation. I'm gonna tell you why. Strife in verse 7 is Hebrew 7379, if you want to look it up. If you have any type of coordinates or lexicon, Hebrew 7379, or you'll put H 7379, and it is the word reeb. Reeb. Or it could be pronounced rib, I guess. It means strife, controversy, dispute, quarrel, or a case at law, a disputation, right? It comes from, it is made of the Hebrew letters resh, yod, bet. Resh, yod, bet. The root, two-letter root, is rob, or resh, bet. It means to rule, master, or increase. The pictograph is a picture of a head, which is the resh. The bet is a picture of the tent representing the family. Combined, these mean head of the family. Y'all remember the matter of fact, before I say that, let me read this. Each family has a master that rules all cases, trials, conflicts, and contests. This person was the representative for the whole tribe. One abundant in authority and wisdom. One abundant in authority and wisdom. This is where the word rabbi comes from. Okay. The root of this, it comes from this two-letter root, which is Rob. Rabbi comes from this. Rabbi will actually mean like my great one, or saying my master to someone, right? And it was later on understood as my teacher, or Lord, or something like that. But it's this is where it comes from, right? But how come it gets into the understanding of strife? Well, where it gets into strife is where another letter is added in, and that's the yod. The yod is what gives us rib or reeb, and that'll be resh, yod, bet. And that pictograph is, you have the head, which is the resh, because resh means head of man, right? It means first. Yod means hand, outstretched hand. Bet means house. The responsibility of the master is to strive for the survival and protection of the house. So that's what he's doing with the work of his hand. With the works of his hand, he is striving to protect the house. This can be a show of strife. It's a show of struggle, right? Not only that, it means to plead, to contend, to chide, to debate, because rabbis used to debate a lot. Now the word in verse 8 is mereba. Mereba. That is the same. It has the same three letters, resh, yod, bet, but two letters have been added on. Now you have mem, resh, yod, bet, hey. So it keeps the three letters, and then at the beginning is a mem, and at the end is a hey. That changes it a little bit. It intensifies it. It escalates it. So you go from regular strife to contention. Now, Meriba means this. Yes, it means strife, and you can look it up. It's 48 4808, H4808. Yes, it means strife, but it means more than strife. It means contention, but it's more than contention. When you look it up, it means provocation. Provocation. Um, Provocation comes from the understanding of provoking. It is challenging. So where you have strife, where it's like bickering, now you have challenging. The dynamic between Abram's herdsmen and Lot's herdsmen escalated from bickering and disagreement to challenging each other to prove dominance and honor of their Lord, fighting amongst themselves like those in the day of the Corinthian assembly. Do y'all remember what took place in the Corinthian assembly? In 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 3 through 4, this is what it says. For ye are yet carnal, for whereas there is among you envying and strife and divisions, are ye not carnal and walk as men? Excuse me. For while one saith, I am of Paul, and another, I am of Apollos, are ye not carnal? So they was comparing, in the Corinthian church, they was comparing their teachers. In Abram's day, they were comparing the glory of Lot, the honor of Lot, the weight and riches and abundance of Lot to that of Abram. And this was in regards to land, territory. Okay? And see, this is the thing. They were arguing over land. It says, it's in verses, it says, so that the land could not support both of them dwelling together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. That strife that came between them, it says the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock, they began to fight against each other. Over what? Because if you're a herdsman, you're only fighting over one thing, and that's land. You're arguing over land. I have a right to this. I have a right to this. I have a right to this section. This is Lot's section. This is Abram's section, right? And mind you, when it shouldn't be that way, because the person that's in charge is actually Abram. All of it is his. And this is where the problem comes in. And this is the problem comes in here. Let me do the sidebar. This dynamic can be seen today in ministries all over. In verses 7 through 8, Abram's and Lot's men are called herdsmen. I want y'all to just bear with me, because there's a reason why I was bringing this out about strife and then it escalating into provocation, into challenging. The Hebrew word for herdsman is ra'ah. Ra'ah is H7462 if you want to look it up. Ra'ah means to pasture, tend, graze, feed, to shepherd, of a ruler, teacher figuratively, of people as flock, to feed, graze, of cows, sheep, etc., of the flock of Israel, a shepherd or shepherdess, to associate with, be a friend to. Okay? It is the word for pastor. Ra'ah is the Hebrew word for pastor. So these herdsmen, right here lies a message. These herdsmen are being compared to pastors. They are leading flock. Okay? Many pastors were there to help lead the flock, but one was sent by Abba, who carried the vision that everyone, even the pastors or the shepherds and Lot himself, followed. That one is Abram. He was the apostle. He was the one sent. He was the one given the vision. He was the one who heard the call and was sent out to this land. He's the apostle. He's the sent one. He was the one that received the word of the Lord. He was the one graced with the sagacity to lead all under him to the promise and a life of abundance and security. By humbling themselves under Abram, they would have ensured their continuance of wealth and life. But we see here that they couldn't do that because they perceived themselves to be higher than they actually were. We will later see that this is what led to their demise, loss of status, and loss of wealth. The reason why I compared this to the church today is because look at a lot of the dynamics that we see. It almost like it's out of whack. If we compare Old Testament leadership to New Testament leadership, right here with Abram being the one that was sent, by definition, that's the apostle. Under the apostle, you had herdsmen. You had pastors who was leading Abram's flock. Y'all see that? And then you have Lot, who's basically right now, he's like second in command with Abram. Why? Because right now Abram don't have a son. So he's like second in command. And now people are paying more attention to what Lot has gained through Abram's wisdom, through the wisdom of the apostle, through the wisdom of the leader, and they're starting to big up his head to make him think he's higher than he actually is. And they're pushing away from their leader. They're pushing away from Abram. You get what I'm saying? For the fame of someone who God has not given the vision to. This happens a lot. This happens a lot. In businesses, this happens in church, this happens a lot. And this is what they're doing. That dynamic happens in the churches later on in the New Testament. But we're seeing it here first. There's nothing new under the sun. They're giving the esteem, right? And they're giving that such honor to Lot for something that he never did. Lot is not the reason for what they gain. And Lot is not the one that's the head of this camp. He's not the one that's been protecting the camp. He's not the one that's been looking out for them and warning and doing things so for the preservation of everybody else. He's not the one that's burdened with the responsibility of going to Canaan and getting to that promised land. The person who is burdened with that is actually Abram. But because they think themselves more highly than they ought to do, they start challenging Abram's men on the land and on who has responsibility to it. Now, when the promise was given, when the words were spoken, he told Abram to go to a land that he will show Abram, a land that is for him and his descendants. That's what he said. Lot and everybody else with them only have ties to the land based upon their ties to Abram. Based upon their ties to Abram. It says, the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land that you see, I will give to you and to your offspring forever. I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring also can be counted. Arise, walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give it to you. It got to a point that Abram and Lot had to separate, but Lot is the one that chose the separation. Abram wanted peace. You see him saying, listen, if you pick the left, I'll take the right. If you pick the right, I'll take the left. He wants peace. It's Lot's people that's stirring up this pot, and they're bigging up Lot's head. And because Lot lacked the wisdom, listen, I've been with Abram this whole time. Abram has taken me in, taught me things. Because of Abram, I gained wealth. Lot became so big-headed that he ended up making the worst decision of his life. He separated from under the protection that was attached to Abram. Because when he separated from Abram, he separated from God's will. And we'll see that later. And those who know the story already know what happened with Lot. But when he separated from Abram, he separated from God's will. and I don't normally teach and say stuff like this, but it bears saying. When Abba has given you a leader, when Abba has given you someone with the vision and he placed you there to follow that vision, stick there. There's a reason why he got you there. There's a reason why he got you up under this particular type of leadership until he releases you. Stick there. Why? Because there's something attached to it until he releases you. Abram had to spend time with his father, even though, what was his father? His father was an idolater, but he spent some time with his father up until the point that he got everything he needed, and then God told him leave. King David sat up under Saul up until the point that it was no more required. Even after being anointed king, he still honored King Saul. There's something we have to understand in the dynamic between the leader and the follower. There's something we have to understand. A leader still is a follower. The only difference is God put this person in place to lead you to a place that you cannot see, because he gave this person a vision that you did not hear. And you have to come into agreement with the vision and become one with his house. That's what Lot was supposed to do. He was supposed to become one with the house of Abram. And becoming one with that house would have left him with great things, right? It would have left him secure. It would have left him in God's will. It would have left him in God's protection. Why? Because Abram's hand was on God. I mean, God's hand was on Abram. But when Lot detached himself from that, he went unto a people that was wicked, and that's Sodom. And we definitely gonna deal with Sodom, because Sodom was so wicked, y'all. When y'all find out how wicked Sodom was, see, a lot of people, they have this understanding that Sodom was just a thing of people think, oh, they just wanted to sleep with the angels. It's way more than that. People think Sodom got destroyed because of just homosexuality. It's way more than that. Sodom was so wicked. Sodom was so wicked. Sodom was so wicked. And this is how you know that Lot does not have any type of wisdom, sagacity, discernment, understanding, because he chose to go to a place that was familiar.
Amen.
Remember, they left from places of idolatry and wickedness. Lot chose to go towards what was familiar. Abram chose to go towards what he had never seen. He followed after the unfamiliar by following after the word of God.
Amen.
And by following after the unfamiliar, God preserved him and his generations.
Yes.
Abba spoke to Abram after Lot separated. Notice what he did. He said, these things were never for Lot, nor was the land to be his. It was for Abram and his progeny. Because this is why it says, the Lord said to Abram after Lot had separated from him. It makes sure they want us to understand that this was after Lot separated from him. Lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward, in every direction. For all the land that you see, I will give to you and to your offspring forever. This is a promise. I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth. This is a promise. So that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring also can be counted. This is a promise. Arise, walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give it to you. This is a promise. If I was you, I would highlight this. This is a promise to Abram. But look, catch this. Where it says, look northward. The word for northward is the Hebrew word safun. Safun. It means northward, north. It comes from an understand that means watch or watchtower. As a watchtower, as a place that where you can watch over a certain area, right? That's what north comes from. But also it represents the North Star, which is a place that was watched for direction. So how they knew where the north was because of the North Star. Excuse me. Then you have the word for southward, which is Negeb. Negeb means south country. It comes from an unused root, which means parched. So towards the south was when the land would get drier and drier and drier because of the heat. So he told them, look northward. Look northward. Look towards the North Star. Look towards the lands going that way, towards the North Star. That's your land. Look towards the lands going southward, where it's parched, where it's dry. That's your land. He said, look eastward. Kadem. Look eastward. What does eastward mean? Kadem means east, antiquity. It can mean front, that which is before or foretime. Front from the front or east, and front of Mount of the East. It can mean ancient time or foretime, or from old. And it comes from a Hebrew root, which is mem dalit kuf. I'm sorry, kuf dalit mem kadem, and it can mean face, east, or before. The place of the rising of the sun. The sun rises in the east. The Hebrews recognized the east as the top of the 4 compass points, contrary to our understanding of north being the top of the 4 points. For the Hebrews, it was east. You know how we go north, south, east, west? They basically went east, west, north, south. The past is understood as what is in front or before you, as the past is known, contrary to our understanding of the future being in front of us. See, for them, the sun rose in the east and it set it in the west. So he told them, look towards Abram, look towards the north, where you see the North Star. That's how you know where the north is. That's your land. Look towards the south, where you see the parched land. That's your land. Look towards the east, where the sun rises. Look towards the east from whence you came. Look towards the east from which is your past, and see your lands. Look towards the west. Now, west is the Hebrew word yam. It also is the word for sea. Why? Because the sun set it in the west towards the sea. So he wants him not only, okay, look towards the north, look towards the south, look towards the east. Now look towards the seas. This is your land. In all 4 corners, he had land. And this is what he tells him. He tells him to go and walk in it. Why does he want Abram to walk in it? Because he wants Abram to set up borders. He wants Abram to establish how long and how wide this land is, and to see it, because this is the land that's going to be allotted to his children. But this is the thing. He said he will give it to Abram. He said he will give it to Abram. And that's the interesting part. He said, I will give it to you in verse 17. The word forgive is the Hebrew word nathan. It can mean, it does mean to give, put, set, to give, to bestow, to grant, to permit, to ascribe, to employ, to devote, consecrate, dedicate, pay wages, sell, exchange, lend, commit, entrust, give over, deliver up, yield, produce, occasion, produce, requite to, report, mention, utter, stretch out, extend. He told Abram this is the land that he will give to him and his descendants. When he gives it to Abram, it can mean that he gives it to Abram and then Abram have to give it to his descendants, or as we see later on, it means that he will give it to Abram and then again have to give it to his descendants. And we see the way that he gives it to his descendants. We see that when Moses comes out of Egypt, in the same way that Abram came out of Egypt, the land is given into their hands. And it's that same Hebrew word when he gave it into their hands. Remember when Joshua and Caleb went to scout out the land? This was that land.
Amen.
And it was given to them by who? The Lord.
Dear Lord.
Why did he give it to them? Because he's a God, he's a promise keeper. He promised Abram that he would give this land. It wasn't given to Lot. See, the reason why we laying this foundation here between this dynamic between him and Lot is because we're going to see in chapter 14 that Lot needs to be rescued.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason why Lot needed to be rescued is because Lot got the big head from the people around him and separated himself from Abram and put himself in a dangerous predicament.
Mm-hmm.
He got from under God's protection and now needed Abram to come rescue him. And Abram didn't come rescue Lot because Lot cried for help. Lot wasn't even aware to the situation that was getting ready to, oh my God. He wasn't even aware of the situation that was getting ready to take place. He wasn't aware that judgment was coming to Sodom and Gomorrah. He wasn't aware until it came knocking at his door. Again, this shows you that Lot did not have the wisdom and knowledge. Lot was not given the vision. Lot was not given the discernment. Lot was not given the sagacity to lead. But in him thinking so, he will lose everything. Everything. In him thinking more highly than he ought, he will lose everything. And listen, I say this today to remind you, never think you are too good for God's leadership. Never think you are too good to listen to what God is telling you to do. Because I guarantee you, if you stick to what the Lord told you to do, if you stick to the vision that he gave you, you will reach the promise. You will complete the dream. You will execute the vision. But when you step from under his protection, which is you stepping out of his word and stepping out of his will, you run the risk of your demise. You run the risk of losing your status. You run the risk of losing everything that he gave you. Because at the point of you separating from him and coming out of his will, everything that you gain afterwards is ill-gotten. And everything that you got under his wisdom can be, you're forfeiting it. And that's what Lot did. That's what Lot did. He didn't yet understand it, and he didn't yet see it. But when he separated from Abram, he forfeited everything that he had gained under Abram's wisdom. And this is something that we just cannot do. This is something that we can afford. The bickering, these things, the strife, they lead to the losing of your resources. Husband and wife, and I'm using this for as an example, fighting against each other. Separating, what happens? When you separate and you divorce, what do you lose? You don't just lose time. You don't just lose maybe your home, you lose resources. You lose so much. You lose sleep. Why? Because somewhere, somehow, the enemy creeps in and ushers in strife. It's the enemy that ushered in strife amongst Lot and Abram. Ushered in that strife between Lot and Abram. Because Abram, all he wanted was peace. Now, not the enemy to do it against Abram, because it didn't matter when it came to Abram's destiny whether or not him and Lot separated. But this is on behalf of Lot's destiny. See, because Lot was tied to Abram by adoption. He was tied to Abram by adoption. So it would have never mattered whether Lot would have stayed or left. It didn't. Because Abram still would have been the person that God called him to do. He still would have been that person that God called him to be. It would have never changed Abram's status with Abba. The only person whose status changed is Lot. And we got to keep in mind When we step out of God's will, it's our status that's changing. Us. God don't diminish because we step to the side. We will if we step out of his will. We will. You know, I could have went into the other books and stuff like that today, but I'm gonna save that for next week's lesson. But I really wanted to hone in on this point because I felt like this was so important because we this Abram and Lot situation, it exposes a lot about people's inward parts, envy and jealousy. Get in the big head because we get some resources. We start thinking that we better than the people that was with us, and we start thinking that and not only that, the people that was with us, but we start thinking we don't need God's direction and instruction no more. And we cannot afford to be like that because it was him that brought us to that point. It was him that brought us to Egypt and took us out and then put us in the land of promise. It's him that does that. He has the control of that. He led you to that business plan. He led you to start that school. He led you to start those things. This is not your idea. He placed that idea in you to bring you into a place of resources and prosperity and abundance, to add weight to your name, to add honor that he may be honored. And when we start thinking that we are more highly than we ought to think, we forfeit being under him. We take ourselves from under his wisdom. We take ourselves from under his sagacity. We take ourselves from under his discernment. We take ourselves from under his truth. And what we're doing, we leave ourselves stranded in the places of wickedness like Lot. And the end for Lot was not pretty. We're going to see that next week. It was not pretty. This wasn't a long one. I didn't intend on it to be, but I just really wanted to express that. Anybody got anything they want to add or questions they want to ask or anything like that? You could do so.
Yes. Man, amazing Bible study, bro. Can we get the Song of Moses, Deuteronomy 32 and verse 15?
I got you.
Yes, sir. Because what you said, it honestly reminds me of Israel, right? Because the same thing happened to them. And then what happened, because they fell, they were so high and mighty, right? God judged them. And that's a verse that it reminds me of.
You said Deuteronomy 32 verse 15?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
It says
verse 15 and 16.
15 and 16. Okay. It says, but Jeshurun grew fat and kicked. You grew fat, stout, and sleek. Then he forsook God who made him and scoffed at the rock of his salvation. They stirred him to jealousy with strange gods, with abominations they provoked him to anger. That's right.
Yes, sir. So Israel, which is Jeshurun, like, listen, was so blessed. Like Lamentation pictures Israel as gold initially, and that they fell like the pitchers, like they became pitchers on the earth that you could just pick up and dash into pieces, right? And so that's what happens when you forget your God. When you forget your God, you can go from being number one to being nothing. And that's a part of the Song of Moses. That's a song that the rest of the world can't sing. And man, it's such a heavy honor to actually be a part of that, because there's hope, there's redemption in this song, in that, you know, we are to remember through both Brother Lot and through this song that God wants all the glory. In the end of the day, this song is about bringing God back his glory and remembering that we can do nothing without his grace. That's it. That's all I wanted to share.
I appreciate you sharing that, man. For real.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate you sharing that. Nana, you got something to say? Because I see your mic is unmuted.
Oh, no. I didn't know it was open.
Oh. Well, look, if anybody else got anything they want to say, you can. If you don't, then listen. Y'all already know. I love y'all so much. Y'all are amazing as always. I pray that today's Bible study, though it wasn't long and enthusiastic as the others, I pray that you got something out of this because it's just so important for us to understand. Again, we have to get back to the basics. We have to get back to the fundamentals. And those things are to fear the Lord and keep his commandments. That's what it is. That's the whole duty of man. Fear the Lord, keep his commandments.
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying? And that's
Amen.
what we got to do. That's what we got to do. We have to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So I really appreciate you guys being here. And I love you guys. And thank you guys for real, for real. Thank you guys for being here. And y'all have a great night. Shalom, shalom to y'all. Pray for me, keep my family in prayer. Um, to those who want to be a blessing, y'all already know the Cash App is in the WhatsApp group and things of that nature. And if you don't have it, just hit me up. But listen, I love y'all. Nana, you unmuted. You got something to say, Nana?
No, I was going to say that about if you want to be a blessing to the man of God, because if you bless him, you're not blessing him for the word. You're blessing him from your heart. Thanking God for using him. Because when you bless the man of God, it's a reward